Why pleasure destroys constancy. You and I both know people who were brilliant, people who seemed destined for greatness, but they never became what they promised they would be. Most people think that losers ruin their lives because of great tragedies, but that is almost never how it happens. Most of the time, people lose themselves because of small things, beautiful things, pleasant things, comfortable things. It is not pain that first destroys a human being. It is comfort. Because pain is frightening, but pleasure is seductive, and it seduces deeply. It seduces constantly. And once a person's soul no longer has command of itself, that person stops being free and becomes a passenger in his own life. And there is something profoundly sad about watching someone being dragged along by desires he can no longer control. During Carnival, many people lose control. During the meth epidemic in California, many people lose control. In environments of luxury, excess, excitement, and stimulation, many people lose control. But this does not happen only in extreme situations. The same mechanism appears on a smaller scale every single day. In food, in the phone, in pornography, in laziness, in the craving for comfort, in the inability to endure boredom, in the need for immediate pleasure. And the problem is not merely moral, it is human. Maybe you do not know this, but a human being can be carried away. There is something in man that can be pulled out of itself, and when that happens, he is in serious trouble. Because at that point, he is no longer living from a center. He is living by being pulled. And here is the important question. Why do some people seem incapable of remaining faithful to the good they themselves claim to admire? Why do they know what they should do, but fail to do it? Why do they begin well, but give up? Why do they make promises, but never sustain them? Why do they have convictions, but live chained to their sensations? Because little by little, people are being conditioned to obey not what is right, just, and true, but what is pleasant, enjoyable, and immediately satisfying. And everyone knows this. A soul governed by what feels good can never remain firm for very long. Because a soul that says yes to everything cannot endure resistance. It cannot endure limits. It cannot endure delay. It has been trained to give in at the slightest difficulty. There is a revealing scene in The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. A character experiences one of the capital's refined foods for the first time, and the moment he tastes it, he immediately perceives the power of pleasure. The idea behind that scene is brutal. Once a person gets used to a certain kind of delight, he may begin to feel as though the rest of the world no longer matters all that much. As if taste could numb the conscience. As if comfort could shrink the soul. As if pleasure were whispering in a gentle voice, "Stay here. This is enough. Nothing else matters." And that is exactly what the sensual part of life does when it takes the center. It does not need to persuade you with arguments. It only needs to capture your attention.
After that, everything else weakens on its own. Eating well starts to feel too hard. Meeting the project deadline feels too demanding. Faithfulness to the person you love feels too heavy. Waiting feels unbearable. Duty feels like punishment. Reality begins to lose to sensation. And that is when inconstancy is born. Inconstancy is not merely a lack of strength. It is a lack of center. An inconstant man is a man who can no longer remain within himself because he has been pulled outside himself. He becomes inconstant because he has been hypnotized by everything that excites him, sweetens him, comforts him, or numbs him. That is why environments of excess almost always produce inner disorder. It was true in the Roman bacchanals. It is still true in parties drenched in legal and illegal drugs. When a human being lives surrounded by too much stimulation, too much pleasure, too much ease, he begins to lose an essential ability. The ability to keep doing what is good when the good demands effort. And nearly every true good demands effort. Love demands effort. Study demands effort. Prayer demands effort. Health demands effort. Raising a child demands effort. Faithfulness demands effort. Building anything great demands effort. Meanwhile, the age of limitless pleasures teaches people to live in an entirely different way. It teaches them to ask all the time, does this feel good? Is this hard? Will this take long? Is the environment comfortable? And from that moment on, the soul no longer asks, is this true? Is this good? Does this make me better? Does this bring me closer to what I ought to be? The exchange seems small, but it changes an entire life. Because a man who lives guided by what is pleasant will eventually betray even what he loves. Not because he hates the good, but because he can no longer carry the weight of the good. That is what happens during Carnival, when the whole atmosphere invites excess. That is what happens with drugs, when one intense sensation dethrones every other priority. That is what happens in a culture of consumption, when comfort becomes a moral standard. That is what happens with pornography, which trains the soul to crave fast, solitary pleasure without responsibility. That is what happens with gluttony, which teaches a man to obey the rule of the little treat. That is what happens with the phone, which trains the mind to remain in nothing. That is what happens with modern life as a whole. We live in a civilization that specializes in hijacking attention, softening the will, and weakening constancy. We live in the age of spineless men and women, and then we act surprised by the very weakness this civilization has produced. The great tragedy is not only that a person becomes indulgent and slowly deformed, inwardly and outwardly. The great tragedy is that he gets used to living this way, outside himself. The tragedy is that he becomes accustomed to the kidnapping, and may even develop affection for the kidnapper. The tragedy is that he forgets how to recollect himself. He forgets how to resist. He forgets how to direct his own life and make his own decisions. Because when that happens, he is no longer merely someone who has fallen. He is someone who has lost his axis. And losing your axis is worse than stumbling. A man who stumbles can still get back up, but a man who loses his axis begins to call freedom the very thing that enslaves him. He begins to call authenticity what merely dissolves him into the herd. He begins to call happiness what is really just anesthesia. And that may be the most dangerous trait of modern man. He does not merely want pleasure. He wants pleasure with moral justification. He wants to be dragged, and woe to anyone who dares call it slavery. That is why constancy has become one of the rarest virtues of our time. Not because modern man is less intelligent, but because he is surrounded by things that pull him out of himself. A flavorful world, inviting him to lose himself in things. A comfortable world, training him to hate whatever is costly. A sensual world, making people dull. In short, a world full of things that nothing else matters. But something does matter, and it matters very much. because a soul is not lost only when it embraces evil. It is also lost when it can no longer remain in the good. And the free man is not the one who experiences everything. He is the one who is not ruled by any of it. In our time, the greatest enemy of constancy is not pain. It is pleasure, the kind of pleasure that persuades you to abandon your center. Because once that happens, you do not merely fall into error, you begin to live outside yourself.